An emergency fund is an amount of money you set aside for unexpected financial emergencies. It's one of the pillars you must build to secure financial health and start working towards bigger financial goals. But there are both right and wrong ways of going about this. In this video, I'm going to help you build a rock-solid emergency fund by telling you why you need one, when to start building one, how much you should have in your emergency fund, and where to hold it to earn the most interest. Let's get started. The purpose of an emergency fund is to protect you from unexpected expenses. Setting aside specific savings for emergencies is an absolute necessity because the majority of people are very bad at keeping money on hand otherwise. A study by Bankrate found that just 41% of Americans would be able to cover a $1,000 expense with what they have in their savings account. This means that 6 out of 10 people do not have enough money in savings to cover an expense greater than $1,000. And when you don't have the cash available to pay for an emergency, you have to come up with another means of paying for it. For most people, this means taking out a loan or charging it to a credit card. The problem now is, if you didn't have enough cash to pay for the emergency in the first place, you probably won't have the cash to repay that debt within the next few months either. So now you're earning interest on that debt. According to US News, the average credit card APR is about 19%, and the average minimum credit card payment is about 2% of your balance. So, assuming you have no other credit card debt and you charge only the $1,000 needed to your credit card, a simple calculation reveals that it would cost you a total of $3,398 to pay off that $1,000 charge. Of course, that's by making only the minimum monthly payments, and at that rate, it would take you 22 years to pay off this balance. And this is exactly how people get trapped into debt. So an emergency fund can help you stay out of debt, and it will be used for a variety of unforeseen expenses like medical bills, car maintenance, home repairs, or unemployment. And after experiencing the COVID pandemic, I think the need for an emergency fund is clearer than ever. For most people, the best time to start saving for an emergency fund is today. But there are a few other financial goals that you might also be working towards, such as investing for retirement or paying off debt. So you have to consider which of these goals is most important or most costly before deciding to take action on your emergency fund. Generally, if you've got any high interest debt, ranging from 7 to 8% or higher, you'll want to start paying that off first. I suggest starting with high interest debt because this debt is guaranteed to cost you lots of money in the short term. Your emergency fund, on the other hand, might not be needed in the immediate future. So I think it's better to free up your debt profile, and then worst case scenario, you at least have more room to take on emergency expenses with things like credit cards in the short term. Of course, this all comes down to risk and whether you're comfortable putting more cash towards your debt based on your likelihood of encountering a financial emergency in the next few months. If your income isn't stable, it's probably a safe choice to hold more cash on hand and pay down your debt a little less aggressively. But if your debt is paid off, or you have fairly low interest debts, then it's a good time to start putting money into your emergency fund. After all, you can always pay off the debt and save for your emergency fund at the same time. Then, once you're debt free, you can focus entirely on building your emergency fund, or you can shift to building your emergency fund and investing. During a phase where you're both investing and saving for your emergency fund, you should limit your investing to responsible retirement investing and avoid any aggressive investing strategies until your emergency fund is complete. So my suggested timeline for building your emergency fund is to start with paying off high interest debt. Then shift to paying low interest debt and building your emergency fund. Then shift to building your emergency fund and responsible retirement investing. Once your emergency fund is complete, you'll be able to pursue bigger financial goals like saving for large purchases or investing more aggressively. And obviously, one of the most important parts of setting up your emergency fund is deciding how much money you want to have in it. Fortunately, this is also one of the easiest parts of building your emergency fund. The rule of thumb for the size of your emergency fund is between 3 and 6 months of your living expenses. So for example, if you had monthly living expenses of $1,000, then you'd want between $3,000 and $6,000 in your emergency fund. Obviously, this number will vary depending on your living expenses, but it doesn't take long to calculate. Just add up all the things you have to pay every month. This would be your rent or mortgage, your groceries, your utility bills, health insurance, car insurance, student loan payments, etc. Exclude things like Netflix, music streaming services, and other things that you could eliminate and go without in an emergency scenario. For me, this comes out to about $1,500. So my target emergency fund size is between $4,500 and $9,000. But how do you decide what you should target between the 3 and 6 month expenses value? Here's a few of the key risks or factors you should think about. First, consider who else is paying your bills. If you have a spouse or a roommate earning money and contributing to living expenses, you can probably aim for a lower emergency fund size. Consider the stability of your income. If your income fluctuates based on seasonal or economic factors, you should aim for the higher end of the emergency fund size. Similarly, consider whether you have other sources of income. If your income is diversified, your income should theoretically be better protected, and that means you'll need a smaller emergency fund. Finally, consider your other options in case of a financial emergency. If you're responsible with a credit card and have a credit card with a high credit limit, you can probably use it in combination with a smaller emergency fund and just pay off that credit card bill before interest accrues. Similarly, if you're young and you have the financial support of friends and family, you might be able to count on them in an emergency, meaning you'll probably be safe saving closer to that 3-month estimate. Whatever size you determine appropriate for your emergency fund, it's likely that it will probably sit for several months at a time before you need to withdraw from it, and hopefully even longer. Since this money will be sitting around, you'll want to figure out a good place to hold these savings so that they stay intact and maybe even earn you some extra money in the meantime. The vast majority of people choose to hold their emergency fund in a high-interest savings account, and this is a perfectly good option for most people. In a high-yield savings account, you'll have quick access to your cash and you can expect to earn around 0.6 to 0.8% interest in the current climate. There are plenty of banks that will offer this savings rate, so if you're happy with this, then it shouldn't be hard to find one. However, there is another savings account option that's been generating a lot of buzz on YouTube lately, and that's with Yotta Savings Bank. This app offers a baseline 0.2% interest, but it also offers weekly prize drawings that give users cash rewards. YouTuber Sebastian from AskSebby worked out the odds on these prize winnings and found that they resulted in an actual annual interest rate of closer to 3%. I'll link that below if you want to learn more, but when it comes to a high-yield savings account, this might be one of the best options right now. Another option for your emergency fund is a certificate of deposit, or CD. A CD is a type of savings account that typically has a higher interest rate than a standard savings account, which these days means around 1%. The catch is, you'll have to keep your money in this account for a specific amount of time without any withdrawals in order to earn the interest. If you pull your money out early, you'll be charged a fee and might forfeit some of the interest as a result. So while this is an option, I personally don't think it's the best option because the interest is only marginally higher than a normal savings account, and you might not be able to withdraw your money when you need it the most. And as someone who wants more out of my money than to just have it keep up with inflation, I personally choose to invest my emergency fund. And yes, this is a riskier option, so I'll go through all of the risks associated with this decision and how I minimize them. The most obvious danger with investing in your emergency fund is that the value of your investment could decrease, and this has 2 risks associated with it. First, your money could decrease in value, leaving you with too little money to cover your emergency expenses. And similarly, the second risk is that if you're forced to withdraw money when your investments are down in value, then you're actually losing more money than you would have if you just held it in a savings account. But I manage these risks in 2 ways. First, I invest in the most stable and reliable investment assets possible, index funds. Specifically, I use Vanguard's Total Market Index Fund, Vanguard's S&P 500 Index Fund, and Vanguard's Total Market Bond Fund. These 3 investments diversify my emergency fund into the entire market, ensuring maximum stability. Sure, there are still bad years, and I haven't overlooked that, but here's what the numbers show. The largest drawdowns that the market has seen over the last 100 years average to a 16% loss. So the second way I manage this risk is by increasing my emergency fund size so that it will still meet my estimated living expenses in the event of a 15 to 20% market decline. It is added risk, but it will allow me to earn significantly higher growth on this money than a savings account would. The second problem is that your money being tied up in the market is not ideal for an emergency. If you need to cash out of your emergency fund, you'll have to sell your assets, then transfer the funds to your bank account, which can take several days. Fortunately, I can't fathom any occasion where I would need every dollar of my emergency fund right that second. In almost every situation, I think I'd be able to put the emergency expense on my credit card, then let the bank transfers play out over the next several days, which gives me plenty of time to pay off the credit card balance before the next billing cycle. Again, a very manageable risk for the upside of generating significantly higher returns on my money. So I'm holding my emergency fund in a taxable brokerage account where I'm using a 75-25 stock bond split with the Vanguard funds I mentioned earlier. I'm also more comfortable with this risk because I have multiple streams of income and multiple investment accounts that I can fall back on in dire situations. But there's one more option for anyone who might be looking to invest their emergency fund, and that's by using a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is a really unique option because it's a tax-advantaged investment account. So all of the benefits you're getting from investing, you're getting tax-free. But it's particularly unique because it can also double as an emergency fund. You're able to withdraw any money from your Roth IRA that you've previously contributed, even if you're not at the 59.5 age threshold typically required. Keep in mind, you can't withdraw any of the interest or profits that money has made yet, just the dollars you put in. However, you can only do this with a short list of expenses, including medical expenses, education expenses, or a first-time home purchase. So this won't cover all emergency situations, and you might still be subject to some penalties in these scenarios. For these reasons, this option isn't quite as flexible as holding your emergency fund in a standard investment account. But considering a Roth IRA is already a no-brainer investment account, it can be helpful to know that you can also use this money in some emergency situations. Overall, whether you choose to hold your money in a savings account, a CD, or you choose to invest it, The biggest priority should be keeping this account separate from your other financial accounts. If you look at that savings account every day right next to your regular checking account, you'll be much more likely to borrow from it, which will undermine the financial security you're working so hard to build. I know I've been guilty of this in the past, and keeping this money elsewhere has made a huge difference. So after all this, I'm curious to know, where are you holding your emergency fund? If you think I'm crazy for investing it into the stock and bond markets, let me know in the comments. And whatever your financial goals might be, make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can crush them out together, and I will see you right back here next time.